Now, in the next few weeks, well, in the next few days actually, on the 5th of May, we've got the local government election, and, which you'll get a chance to vote also for AV or not AV. This election will be a test, probably mainly for the Liberal Democrats. It will be the election where the Liberal Democrats fail abysmally, and they'll probably lose the AV votes as well, in which case that could cause some divisions within the coalition, we hope. I don't think, as New Labour has said, that voting for AV is picking the Tories. It's the Liberals who want to kick. The Liberals are the ones that have made this coalition. The Liberals are the ones that could be stopped, especially in Wolverhampton, as we've seen, because the Liberals, who were in coalition with the Tories for a couple of years, finally gave up, and one of them stopped voting with them, was too embarrassed to vote for all the cuts they were doing in Wolverhampton, and Labour's taken over control back in Wolverhampton. They're likely in 4 days' time to increase their majority and keep Wolverhampton Labour, which has certainly, as a public service worker, we've seen some different changes, and we've seen some of the cuts that we've campaigned on with the Trades Union Council and service user groups, like the Meals on Wheels campaign and the day centre charges. We've seen a lot of those cuts that the Tories put in place with the help of the Liberals, reversed by Labour. So we need to continue that. And it is important on May the 5th to go out and vote, whoever you vote for, because in 3 wards in Wolverhampton, Springvale, Bilston North and Bushbury North, the fascist BNP are standing. And the Trades Union Council has again run a campaign in each of those wards, leafleting all the homes where the fascists stand, in order to get people to come out and vote for somebody else. Now, they've stood in 20 or 30 elections in Wolverhampton, and every single one so far they've lost. And in fact, in recent years, their votes have dwindled and dwindled, and every time that we've campaigned against them, the vote's gone down. So we need to continue that and make sure they don't get a foothold in any parts of Wolverhampton. So it is important to go out and vote, even if you're not too enamored with New Labour. Please go out and vote for them, or it'll just stop the fascists getting in. In the next few months, we're likely to see some strikes over public service pensions over the summer. This is building on what's been going on for March. It's not we're not going to get rid of the government immediately. It's going to take some years, so we need to keep on the campaign. There's some sheets going around on the tables on clipboards with sign-up details for Wolverhampton TUC. So if you are local and you're interested in finding out what's going on at the anti-cuts campaign, please write down your name and your email or your mobile number and get involved in our campaign, to get involved in our anti-fascist campaigns. I'll finish now, but I'd just like to point out what you've seen on the media in the last few days, largely lots of bits about the royal wedding. What we've been seeing before that was attacks by the British and the Americans backing one side of a civil war in Libya, not seemingly knowing which side is which side is good and which side is bad, just supporting one side against the government. Now, they picked Libya because of the oil, because of the British interest in Libyan oil. There aren't such interests in Bahrain and Syria, where there's tremendous repression of the people. The reason which the British and Americans took to attack Libya. In fact, the British government has granted visas to the ruling class and the most despotic countries in the world. The King of Swaziland, who's had a state of emergency since 1973. The leaders of these countries in the royal family of Bahrain, for instance, and the Syrians, and even the Libyans and the Zimbabweans, which they don't seem to like most of the time. When it comes to the royal family, Tony Blair doesn't get an invite, but all the dictators around the world do. So you can see who the royal family are and where their interests lie. They're not with us, they're with the ruling class. We pay them £30 million a year. They are the biggest benefit scroungers in history. They take more out of this country than any other family, whatever the tabloids might say. So I'll finish now, and I'll introduce Mr. Khalsa from the Indian Workers Association. Association, so to speak. And please get involved. Please get involved in our campaigns. The more people that get involved, the quicker we're going to get rid of the government. Thank you.
Now, it is just about the 16th World Trade Congress of the World Federation of Trade Unions. The recent meeting, which was held on April 10, 2011 in Athens, Greece. And I will just point out certain very salient features of that meeting, what happened, rather than going them into detail. It was, first of all, to unite the struggle to protect the hard-won rights of the working class, which is under attack under the pretext of global economic crisis. It is quite right that the working class didn't create the crisis, as you can see over here, but they are the victim of these crises. We must realize that. And secondly, to achieve the contemporary needs of the workers. And the third was to achieve the society which is categorically, it asserted, and it's not possible to present capitalists under the capitalist system. 881 delegates from 105 countries over 4 continents, they participated in this meeting. The global economic crisis, they have been worst since the 1930s. And the discussions in the Congress focused mainly on the impact of the global economic crisis on the working class and on the strategies needed to adopt by the working class movement at the various national and international levels to protect the interests of the workers. That was very important. And then the report also pointed out at the sharp rise in unemployment and dramatic shrinking of the real income of the workers, the reduction of social spending budgets, raising the retirement age to allow the decay and parasitism of the capitalist system. The fact that the toiling masses were actually bearing the brunt of these crises, it is being sidetracked and concealed clandestinely, hypocritically, cynically by the capitalist system, as they present it as national problems and a pretext to impose further burdens on the working class. This is what we must realize. It is actually the capitalists who are responsible for these crises. In Britain, the income of the rich people increased by 30% last year. What a shame. And the number of billionaires increased from 43 to 53. What a great shame. And 9 of them increased their wealth by more than 1 billion euros during last year. Now 19% of the total workers is daily confronting the unemployment. Several countries have, the unemployment has reached the alarming proportions, and the workers are being driven to crime, anti-social activities, those unemployed people. We are aware that the science and technology have made huge advances, but only to the benefit of the, not to the common people, but of the capitalist people. Undoubtedly, the world has necessary resources and expertise for increasing the global food production. But the tragedy is that the number of hungry and the malnourished people is still rising, still increasing. In 15 countries, including Afghanistan and several African countries, life expectancy at birth is as low as 45 to 49. And thousands of women they just lost their life because of the lack of medical care during the childbirth. In 37 more countries, life expectancy at birth is 50 to 59 years. The World Federation Trade Union strongly criticized the prescriptions of the World Bank for the development of the third world countries and demanded that the debt of the third world countries should be cancelled now because it has already repaid many times for the exploitation of the people by the rich resources of the third world countries, which are being used by the capitalist people. So there is no justification for demanding that debt back. The Athens Pact asserted that the present global crisis was as a result of the systematic exploitation by the capitalist people. The powerful struggles and the experiences of the great struggles by the working class in various countries, Greece, Portugal, Spain, France, Italy, Mexico, USA, the other countries, Asia, Africa, Latin America, against the attacks on the working class and their living conditions were noted and highlighted by the WFTU. Similarly, there were struggles recently against rising food prices, unemployment, and also for democracy in Tunisia, Egypt, Bahrain, Libya, Yemen, and Jordan. These uprisings indicate that the people, particularly the young, were getting mobilized to fight for their rights. The crisis provided opportunities for the awakening of the working class. This is a very good sign. So the serious problems, they do coexist. Unless there is orientated approach for and by the working class, there is a risk of these movements being quickly deflated or manipulated by the imperialism and their associations. The imperialism will strengthen its hold against the labor movement under one or the other pretext. The Athens Pact was unanimously adopted by the Congress, pointing out that the working classes must unite against the monopolies and the big capital. The WFTU strongly noted the need to organize women and the youth. In their struggle, there must be a collective action. The Congress emphasized the need to reach out to the young workers to struggle against unemployment, fight against the spread of drugs, child prostitution, illiteracy. Now lastly, the Congress expressed confidence that by the time of the next Congress, when WFTU could celebrate its 70 years, thousands of new trade union cadres, young men and women workers would be developed and promoted to strengthen the class struggle, and that they would deliver to the next generations a world without exploitation. Now, this is something which I noted down recently, which is from the World Trade Union. Now, about Libya, the cynical attack on Libya. In 1911, on 26th of October, the Italian planes bombarded Tripoli near Turkish troops, on Turkish troops. Libya was then a part of the Ottoman Empire, but subsequently Italy, just fought, the Libyans fought against the Italian invaders. In the 1920s, Mussolini used planes to bombard and kill thousands of the tribal fighters on their horseback. And that is the history. Now 100 years later, Libya has been subjected to a massive aerial attacks by USA, France and Britain. The cynical and hypocritical, how is it for the Western powers to claim to protect the civilians of Libya? The tragedy is that hundreds of innocent people have been killed. Why? They have poked their dirty nose without any justification. The assault on Libya started on March 19, 2011. The funny thing is that the 1973 UN Security Council resolution provided coverage for this aggression against a sovereign country. The resolution called for a no-fly zone to be imposed over Libya. But what happened? It was worded so craftily to leave a space for an outright intervention when it meant to protect the civilians. What a hypocrisy. So the military might of NATO has been placed behind the rebels. France and Britain are the leading countries for calling a war on Libya. Now, look at this. The British government officials have stated that the killing of Gaddafi would be legal in case it prevents civilian deaths as stated in the UN regulations. Now, Fidel Castro had said that the aggression against Libya would be committed by NATO, which is true. It is happening. It is a fact, therefore, that the US concern in Libya has never been about the common people or the human rights. As far as Obama is concerned, he is trying to hide or conceal his own warmongering. In his recent speech, he said he will deny the regime arms, cut off its supply of cash, assist the opposition, work with the other nations to hasten the day when Gaddafi leaves power. On the other hand, he said if we try to overthrow Gaddafi by force, our coalition will splinter. Now, where does he stand? The NATO took over the charge, but when Germany pulled out its naval frigates and surveillance activities, again, Turkey disapproved this. At a recent conference in London, it was falsely claimed that the Arab League was represented, but the fact is only UAE and Qatar, they were the people who spoke for the rest of the Middle East countries, Arab countries. But Egypt, Algeria did not participate. The US and Britain have started supplying arms to the rebels. The NATO commander has stated without any concrete evidence that the Islamic fundamentalists and the Al-Qaeda people may be present in the present ranks of the rebels. There is no evidence. Possibly NATO is trying to create in Libya a pro-Western alternative government to suit them or their own vested interest. So the NATO intervention seems to be a calculated and cynical move to reverse the popular uprisings of the masses. In 2003, Gaddafi regime was a favorite of Britain. Now look at the hypocrisy. And I'm just going to finish now. Now this is being demonized as the same way as Saddam was demonized in Iraq. So the West is fueling the civil war in Libya. India condemned this. Why is it that US along with NATO hijacking the United Nations mandate this way? Thank you very much for listening. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Mr. Khalsa. I'd like to introduce Cheryl Pidgeon, who's the Secretary of the Midlands TUC. Cheryl is the most senior trade unionist in the East and West Midlands, and she's the leader of over 1 million trade unionists. So here she is. Thank you.
It makes me sound really grand, but it's an honour and a privilege to serve as the Regional Secretary of the Midlands TUC. A job, it's not a job, it's just a way of life, and it's a huge privilege. And I'd like to say thank you to Nick, because I know how hard he works by the times that he sends me emails at like 1 and 2 in the morning, and I know what efforts have been put in today, so thanks Nick, you're a star, thanks. Comrades, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I bring greetings and messages of solidarity from the entire Midlands TUC at a very crucial point in the year and for our movement. Decent working people in our communities are under attack yet again. They face unemployment, pay and pension cuts, destruction of services, cuts to benefits, and attacks on union organisation, and of course the threat from the vile far right. How many times and for how many years will we have to fight the same battles against the same tiny class of wealthy and powerful people currently represented by the condemned coalition? This out-of-touch, privately educated government cabinet made up of 2 parties, yet rejected by the people in our general election, cobbled together to represent millionaires rather than the millions of people, decent working people of Britain. Comrades, we are most definitely not in this together. Well, this government wants us to buy into the big society. Well, a society where decent people are made redundant one day and then asked to do the same job for free the next is not big, and is no society that we want to belong to. Thank you. So who here today voted for such a government that steals from unborn babies, who attacks and robs the sick, the poor and the elderly, who puts profit before people? And who here voted for fewer jobs, fewer police on the street, fewer firefighters, fewer teachers, fewer nurses, for the destruction of public services, for the destruction of national pay bargaining agreements, and for the privatisation of schools, prisons, and of course our NHS, the jewel in the crown, the envy of our world, whilst they at the same time allow the bankers who caused the global financial mess to continue to award themselves obscene bonuses, and for the tax avoidance to continue by the billions, to protect the rich while the poor continue to be exploited. Well, I'm very proud, as I said earlier, of the Wolverhampton, Bilston and District Trades Councils and all the Trades Councils in the Midlands TUC. Of all regions, we lead in the TUC for the fantastic work that the Trades Councils do, for they are the front line of the TUC. They are the TUC at work at its best. They defend and protect local people and local services, and they dispel the myths day on day of the condemned cuts, exposing the attacks on local services and local people, service users and service providers. I recently attended a city full council meeting where members of the public looked in disbelief and sheer anger as local services and centuries of decent public service by decent hard-working public servants, not those where they allege gold-plated pensions that are reported by the hysterical right-wing media, they were being cut by a condemned council. So the Tories made the decisions and the Lib Dems followed like sheep. And I was proud to sit alongside members of the public, service users and service providers who poured scorn on such decisions. Those men and women, voluntary and community organisations who have given decades of brilliant service, who have given protection to some of the most vulnerable people in our society. They were all resolute in their anger, as I am. None of them who voted for cuts and the destruction of valuable community support and services. They too felt betrayed, and many vowed to turn their anger into action. Across our region, the Midlands, that's from the Wales border right through to the Wash, this anger is replicated like never before. And on March the 26th this year in London, over 500,000 people marched with the TUC from communities, faith groups, organisations across the length and breadth of the UK. They came together with us to show their strength of anger against the cuts. The young came, the elderly came, the sick, the disabled, men and women, the employed, the unemployed, faith groups, voluntary organisations, community organisations, public servants, to demonstrate yet again their anger against the condemned cuts of mass destruction. But let's remember, as has already been said by the two previous, by the outrageous greed of the banks, which caused the biggest recession since the 1930s. Taxing its bonuses, closing down its tax havens, and putting an end to its shameful tax avoidance. And where better to start with than the Robin Hood tax on transactions between financial institutions. A simple sales tax that could raise as much as £20 billion in the UK alone. That would be a great way of getting back at the banks and getting them to pay us back for the mess that they caused. And it would help us save and protect services and jobs. And in plain English, it's high time that the bankers coughed up. March the 26th for the TUC and for the UK was a truly brilliant day, not just for trade unions, but for the alliances and friendships that were built and strengthened across faiths, across communities and organisations. But that was just the start of the people's fight back. So I urge everyone in our region to continue to show their strength of anger and opposition to the destruction of our communities, our public services, and on May the 5th, this Thursday, to send a huge message to this government that enough is enough. The people of our region will not stand by and let them destroy our cities, our services and our communities. We must not let them continue to steal from pensioners, steal our pensions and throw hundreds of thousands of decent people onto the dole and cause division and hate in our communities. We must not be divided, and we will not be divided. People all around the world are fighting for freedom and democracy. Many people around the world, and indeed in our country, look to us for strength and solidarity. For many of the most vulnerable people in our region and in our communities, we are their last line of defence. We must not be the generation that let the NHS slip into oblivion. We must not be the generations that allow the government to put profit before people, families and our communities. For all it takes for evil to succeed is for good people to do nothing. Well, the people of the Midlands, East and West, are good, decent people. To do nothing on May the 5th, next Thursday, will give this government the mandate for further cuts of mass destruction. Let's ensure that they never have such a mandate. Because the British people did not vote to have £81 billion cut from spending during the course of this Parliament. And remember, the coalition parties during the election campaign promised to protect frontline services. What absolute hypocrisy. Our region needs strong public services, decent jobs and greener growth and industry, where people contribute by working and paying taxes, not by being cast aside, thrown onto the scrap heap, where skills and spirits are lost forever. For too many of us remember the scars of our mining communities. What we need is a strong and effective trade union response, as well as showing that there is a credible alternative, as well as building a wide coalition against the cuts. We need to do what we've always done: mobilise, organise and campaign. Ultimately, as has been said before, it's through our collective action that we will make the difference and stop these vicious cuts in their tracks. And I am convinced that we can do this. After public pressure and well-organised campaigns, we have already seen this government make two embarrassing U-turns. First, on its scandalous decision to cut school sports, and then on its cat-handed attempts to sell off Britain's forests. As more individuals, families and communities are affected by the cuts, and as tensions rise within the coalition parties, we can win further concessions from the government. To do nothing on May the 5th is too high a price to pay for our region. So please vote for a party that will protect our cities, our regions, our services, the most vulnerable people in our communities, our generations to come, our children and their children, all people, not just the few elites. Let's rid our region of unnecessary condemned cuts of the hatred and division of the far right. Let's join together and continue to defend and protect and uphold our values of solidarity, of social justice for all, not the few, respect and dignity for all and not the few. So let's show this government together that the people of the Midlands are fighting back. Our values, our public services, our communities are not for sale. So please vote wisely this Thursday. Get your families out, get your friends out, get your neighbours out and vote for strong public services, strong communities, united in our values and rich in solidarity. Thank you for listening. Have a fabulous evening.